Chapter 8. Coming Home. The morning of graduation dawned bright and clear over Sydney. The kind of spring day that made everything feel possible. Jacaranda trees painted the streets purple, their fallen blossoms carpeting the footpaths like nature's celebration confetti. Ibrahiim stood before his mirror, adjusting his school tie one last time. The Star of David pendant now hung openly around his neck, catching the morning light. 3 months had passed since the confrontation at the cricket oval. Months that had changed everything and nothing at all. "Ready, love?" his mum called from downstairs. The house was already buzzing with activity. His grandmother Fatima was in the kitchen making traditional Palestinian sweets, while his dad practiced his proud parent smile in the hallway mirror. The graduation ceremony was being held in the school hall, decorated with flags representing every nation in their diverse student body. As families filed in, the space became a living snapshot of modern Australia. Hijabs next to suits, saris beside sundresses, the musical mix of countless accents creating a symphony of belonging. Michael was already there, helping to set up chairs. Their friendship had evolved into something different but perhaps stronger, shaped by understanding rather than assumptions. They'd spent countless afternoons at the cricket oval, not just playing but talking about identity, about family, about what it meant to be Australian. "Saved you a seat, mate," Michael called out, gesturing to the chair next to his. The word mate had returned to their vocabulary, carrying new weight and meaning. Principal Thompson began the ceremony with a speech about diversity and unity. "Our school," she said, "reflects the best of what Australia can be, a place where different stories come together to create something new." As school captain, Ibrahiim had to give a speech. He stood at the podium, looking out at the faces that had become his community. His grandmother sat in the front row, tears already glistening in her eyes. Next to her, Michael's parents, the Seds, who had gradually reopened their hearts and home to him. Rachel's family sat nearby, her grandfather nodding encouragingly. 3 years ago, Ibrahiim began. "I arrived in Australia thinking I knew exactly who I was. I was Palestinian, full stop. But Australia, and this school, taught me that identity isn't about full stops. It's about commas, about ands rather than ors. He touched the pendant at his neck. "I learned that I could be Palestinian and Jewish, Muslim and proud of my Jewish heritage, Middle Eastern and Australian. Each part of my identity doesn't diminish the others. They make me whole." In the audience, Michael smiled. They talked about this during cricket practice, about how Australian soil had given them space to reconcile parts of themselves that might have remained in conflict elsewhere. "My grandfather," Ibrahiim continued, "made choices for survival. He changed his name from Abraham Steinberg to Ahmed Samir, changed his faith, changed his identity. But he never forgot who he was. He just became more. And isn't that the story of Australia? We don't erase who we were to become Australian. We bring our stories here and add new chapters." Ahmed, sitting with his family, nodded slowly. The past months had brought long conversations, difficult questions, and gradually, understanding. They'd found common ground in their shared love of both their heritage and their new home. Today, as we graduate, we are not just celebrating our academic achievements. We are celebrating the lesson Australia taught us, that belonging isn't about choosing one identity over another. It's about finding ways to honor all parts of who we are. After the ceremony, families gathered in the schoolyard. The Samirs and the Seds naturally drifted together, sharing plates of Fatima sweets and Marie's Lebanese treats. The adults chatted in a mix of Arabic and English, while the graduates posed for photos under the Jacaranda trees. "Cricket practice this arvo?" Michael asked, throwing an arm around Ibrahiim's shoulders. "One last game before uni starts. Wouldn't miss it," Ibrahiim replied. "Though I'm still not as good as you. Nobody's as good as me," Michael grinned, repeating their old joke. "But you're not bad for a Jewish Palestinian Australian mate." Rachel joined them, her camera full of graduation photos. Speaking of which, are we still on for next week? My grandfather's really looking forward to sharing his stories with both of you. They planned a series of conversations, with Rachel's grandfather about his Holocaust experiences, with Michael's parents about their Lebanese heritage, with Ibrahiim's grandmother about their complex Palestinian history. Understanding, they'd learned, came from listening to all sides of the story. As the afternoon light softened into evening, families began to drift home. The Jacaranda petals still carpeted the ground, now mixed with mortgage mortarboard tassels and fallen certificates. Ibrahiim looked around at the school that had become so much more than just a place of education. His grandmother approached, carrying a small box. "Your grandfather wanted you to have this when you were ready," she said, opening it to reveal an old watch. It belonged to his father in Warsaw. He kept it all these years, through all the changes, to remind himself that time moves forward but carries our past with it. Ibrahiim fastened the watch on his wrist, feeling the weight of history and hope. Above them, cockatoos screeched their way home across the Sydney sky, free and loud and uniquely Australian. Ready to head home, his dad called. Home. Such a simple word for such a complex concept. But looking around at his family, his mates, his community, Ibrahiim knew exactly what it meant. Home wasn't a single place or identity. It was everywhere his story was understood and accepted, everywhere he could be his complete self. "Yeah," he said, "I'm ready.